All right. Who's got the first question? John?
Well done, sir. Well done. Well, listen, I think we're all still buzzing about the UFC 253 from this past weekend. So before we move to this week's card, give us your thoughts. What did you take away from Israel Adesanya? Because I think what everybody's trying to figure out, did Adesanya do something amazing, or did Paulo Costa not show up?
I know.
What did you take out of it?
You know, if you watch that betting show that we do on UFC Fight Pass, Yanni the Greek said his bet on Israel was the biggest sports bet he made in several years. So it's like the sharps are sharp for a reason. You know, I was, and several others on the crew were kind of like, is he going to get tested? You know, is Costa going to just close him down? Costa just closed him down like twice, and then, you know, Adesanya ducked out of the way, and how good was his movement at that point after eating some of those early leg kicks. So I was certainly surprised, but like, you have to credit Adesanya. I mean, it's certainly curious, the game plan of Paulo Costa, and I think his coaches were even curious about it. But, you know, I'm not going to take away anything from the champ after that.
Yeah. So the name Jon Jones is getting brought up a lot after 253, right? Jon Jones versus Adesanya, Jon Jones versus Jan Blachowicz, Jon Jones still at heavyweight versus, you know, the Steve Bain and Gane winner. So if they were asking you to make the call and say, hey, which one would be most exciting for you?
That'd be a fun world. Man, I don't know. I think Jones against Stipe is like certainly like this super fight that a lot of people want to see, and there's a lot of juice on that. Jones against Blachowicz, he was saying he was happy for him, but now he's saying like, maybe I'll get my belt back, you know? So maybe did he see a path to victory against Jan, and he didn't want to gamble against Reyes again because of how the first time went around? And against Adesanya, like that's a cool fight too. I think Adesanya Jones is like two big stars that are gonna talk the talk and they're gonna build it up, and that would be a mega event. But Adesanya's like, I don't want to call him skinny, but right, he's not a big middleweight. So going against a guy like Jones, who's, you know, gonna move up to heavyweight supposedly, then I don't know. I think Jones and Stipe is just that's a can't miss fight.
Pretty crazy. We've been asking all the fighters, what's it like for them to do their job in these venues? You've been doing it for a while now too. It's different. What's your take on, you know, having to work inside these fanless venues?
Right. It's not bad. I mean, I miss the fans because it's cool to get dressed in the back and get ready for the show. And I know that we're not fighting and we're not playing a football game and all that, but to walk out of the tunnel into an arena and kind of put on the headset and get ready to go, there's a game day feeling to that you kind of miss, certainly without a crowd. And I just miss the tension that the crowd provides, and just like when you can sit back and wait for the main event walks and you can kind of like live in that moment. Like, our job has been great all night, whatever. Now we get to sit back at 5 minutes and take in the arena before we kind of call the fight. So I really miss it. But as far as like once you're in the call of the fight, it's not too noticeable to me. I mean, the biggest thing that's noticeable is when you have a huge knockout or a big finish and you kind of have your outburst, oh, there's the tap, whatever, and then it's silent. Right? And you usually lay out there and there's a big, you know, reaction and it's a lot of fun. But yeah, that slapped me in the face when Charles Oliveira did that in Brasilia. Right. And it was just kind of like, this place would have had the roof blown off of it, you know, and instead it's just kind of like silent and you hear that. So that's the biggest difference. But as far as like in the fight and calling it, I think you just got to keep the headphones on, and, you know, we hear the music of the broadcast and all those other sort of things. You just got to kind of live in that world.
Nice. So I want to ask you about this week's main event with Holm-Aldana. As you're kind of breaking down, getting ready for it, like, what's the most intriguing things that you're seeing as far as, you know, what's standing out to how they're going to match up?
I just think the big story is, like, if Holly has an impressive win, it's like she's not going anywhere. You know, she doesn't want to. I did a feature on her that'll come out later this week, and she's like, everybody has an opinion of a 38-year-old woman with no kids who's a professional athlete and all that stuff. You know, and it just kind of to sit there and chat with her about, like, I want the belt, I want to keep fighting the best. You know, the results haven't gone my way, but I'm fighting Cyborg and Nunes and these great fighters. So to stop Aldana, if she's able to stop Aldana, I think that says a lot. And for Aldana, it's like the arrival of a new contender, you know, new blood, because Nunes has been so good that do we have another one that gives it a go. I think that it's kind of a bantamweight Grand Prix in the top 6 coming up this weekend. It's going to be a lot of fun.
That's very true. And the last thing for me, I want to ask you about like any other names that are standing out, like anybody on tape or personalities or anything that maybe people aren't don't have on their radar that they should be looking forward to this weekend.
Charles Jourdain is he's awesome, man. He's such a nice kid. He's young. He's really good. He's exciting. He he basically says like this is not a marathon career. This is a sprint career. We're out here fighting. I'm 24 years old. I gotta get in and do it while I can and do it while I'm at the top of my game. And his last fight against Feely was really good. I'm interested to see how he grows from that because that was the first time he took an L from like a non-wrestler. But like he's there to be exciting. And for Josh Kulabau, I get the similar sense from him, and he fights up a weight class in New Zealand against Jalen Turner, the tallest lightweight in the division. So for him to come back to 145, and I think that's a fun fight.
I was going to ask you, obviously, that I think Israel winning might not necessarily have been a surprise, but probably the
way right.
Was that more surprising to you, or was Jan defeating Reyes in the manner he did more surprising?
No, I thought Jan had the ability to do that. I mean, he's done that to a lot of people over the last few fights. Knockouts in 3 of his last 4 wins, and sitting at that plus 200 underdog price in like 7 of his last 8 wins. I think he's won 8 of 9. Like I think a lot of people were happy to get that plus 200 on Jan Blachowicz, and they, he's so experienced. 37 years old. He's got a big old head. Like Dom Reyes has been this prospect on the rise, but had half the fights I think that Blachowicz did. So I thought I didn't guarantee a win or anything like that. I wasn't picking Blachowicz necessarily to win, but I absolutely thought if he was going to win, then that's absolutely probably a likelihood that he could do it that way. And for Adesanya, I think everyone expected a finish in that fight. We just didn't know how it was going to come.
Do you think Dom respected Jan's power too much to rush him like he did against Jon? Against Jon, he was very, very active in the first round, and then this one he almost seemed timid in the first round. He didn't quite know how to get in.
Yeah, I don't know. I just know that in advance of the fight, Reyes kind of was like, yeah, I wish I had more than 6 weeks to prepare. And Blachowicz was like, we both had 6 weeks to prepare. What's the big deal? So, was he in his head about his preparation in terms of, another title fight? And how much did he learn in the first one? You can learn in a loss, but it can also play with your head, especially if it's a fight that you were so confident that you won that you didn't win. So how do you attack the next one? I mean, I don't think it's the first or the last time that you see a different approach that maybe doesn't work, especially for a guy that is still fine. He's got 13 fights. He'll be back. He'll be here for a long time.
Do you think there's something to be said that it's kind of hard to get motivated to fight Jan when you're convinced you just beat the greatest of all time?
Yeah, I mean, it's like you'd have to ask him that, but like, yeah, that's gotta. I can't imagine. I can't imagine what it's like. I'm working with Angela Hill this weekend too, and last week, and it's like she's coming off of 2 split decisions that she feels that she won against Michelle and Claudia, 2 of the best in her weight class. It's like, how is she feeling? You guys can ask her how she's feeling when she comes down later, but like to deal with that is like, it's gotta be tough to just, you're talking about one judge's scorecards, and I see it when I prepare for fights all the time, where it's like you'll see their last 5 results, and it's just like, man, where would this person have been if one judge sees one round a different way in like 3 of their last 6 fights? It's like all of a sudden there might be a 4 next to their name instead of a 14 or something. So I mean, I can't imagine what it's like to kind of go in with that mental pressure in addition to the fact that you got to fight someone. That's all something that we can't really speak to.
What did you make of Izzy's celebration, the dry humping and everything? He seems to believe there's a double standard. Like if there was anyone else that didn't look like him, it wouldn't be as big of a deal.
We're talking about it, so I like it. I know the martial arts code is something that's different, but at the end of the day, like, this is a sport, and pro sports at the end of the day are for entertainment. It's competition for them, and it's a way to make a living for them. But for all of us watching, it's entertainment. And I'm as Rogan said it a few months back, we're professional fans. Like, we sit in the front, and would I be upset if I was Costa's team and in the code of the martial artist and all that? Yeah, probably. But then that's another storyline of like, and then people who are Izzy fans are like, yeah, man, he's got so much swagger and so much confidence, and he'll do whatever the hell he wants, and people love those types of guys too. So.
Do you think there is a double standard when it comes to fighters like Izzy, and then you see fighters like Colby saying all these things, and people kind of like,
no,
yeah, he's right, and then Izzy comes out.
I guess I haven't been on social media the last few days to know that there's so much hate with it.
Sure.
I think Colby's getting plenty of hate, as he often does, and he's fine with that. For Israel, I think that getting a little hate, he's probably fine with that too. It kind of makes him go. If you're not getting hated on, then that's not a great sign in the fight game. You know, it's like the more haters you get, the more you're striking a chord, and probably the more loyal your fans are too. So I think it's what makes the fight game fun.
There are 4 cards left on Fight Island.
Yeah.
Is there a particular fight that you're looking forward the most?
Really wish I was here for Ortega and Zombie. I mean, obviously the pay-per-view is going to be insane and whatever, but I was in Korea last year to call that fight, which ended up being Frankie Edgar against Zombie. I think I've called like 3 Zombie fights. One was the Yair Rodriguez one. The other one was in Korea, and then the other one was against Moicano. So it's like you put Zombie on a card, and it's just the most exciting thing to call. And Brian Ortega is awesome. I'm excited to see how he responds after like 2 years away. And there's some heat on it now. And Ortega was going to be the favorite last December, but now Zombie's the favorite. Like, I wish I was here for that one. I'll be certainly on my couch watching that one at home.
So 2020 has been a crazy year.
Yeah.
Everywhere, for everyone. Was there something, a fight or something that stands out the most for you this year, or just like the whole Fight Island thing or something else?
Being in Brasilia was weird. It was crazy. I got on a flight from Las Vegas to New York, and on that flight I was like watching TV, and that's when like the college basketball conference tournament started getting canceled. That's when the NBA announced like there was going to be no fans starting the next day. Like, stuff was happening in that 4 hours. I landed in New York, and I called my boss and I said, should I get on this plane to Brazil? You know, because then it's like, what's going to happen in the next 3-4 days? And at that point, the fans were still scheduled to go, you know, that we hadn't even called off the fans. He's like, the event's happening, get on that plane. So, you know, that was like, I think we've all learned how to deal with it. And the more that we live in this situation, like the more we know to deal with it, and we see how we can take precautions and all that other stuff. But back then we didn't. So to fly down to Brazil and to call an event and to not know what to expect was it was stressful, and we got the show done. I was super proud to have done it and get back. And, you know, then I've been proud of the UFC to like handle things the way we have. Early on I was like, I think I work for the right guy in terms of job security and that we're going to keep the show going. And I've been happy to, but that first one, just because there was so much unknown, I'll remember that weekend a lot because I was sitting in my room a lot. It's just like, what's going to happen next?
Jose stole my question, but I have another one.
Yeah.
So Paulo Costa, he's been saying on social media that he wants to fight Adesanya again, especially after he saw the video what Adesanya did
Yeah.
after he won. We're not sure. I mean, Dana will say if he deserves another shot
Mhm.
and stuff like that. But do you think eventually they will face each other again? Do you think Adesanya will keep this belt for a long time, and maybe in the future we're gonna see those two?
I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, like, they're young enough where they're not going anywhere for a while. You know, it's not like one of them's 36 years old and going to call it quits soon. You know, it's like they're there. I think Adesanya wants to be a busy champion. I think Costa probably learned a lot. Like, if you never lose, you can't learn those lessons. You just, like, he's just blitzed people and just run through them. And so now he faced a certain level of competition where it didn't work out, or whatever his game plan was, he's going to have to tweak it. I absolutely think that they'll match up again in the future at some point, but I don't think it'll be next. I think Costa's got to earn it after his performance. He's got to go back and earn it a little bit. But I'm excited for Adesanya. Like, busy champions are awesome, especially that have the name like him and the personality like him, and he's trying to be great and, you know, match Anderson Silva, and there's guys coming up at 185 that are going to give him those tests, but give him the ability to maybe break those records. So it's exciting.
Now the trash talk, of course, it makes a
Right.
to do that. Do you think like whoever likes the trash talk, it makes fighters more successful because they like to make some noise on social media, or it doesn't matter? It matters what they do.
I think there's no way to quantify what's going to work. There's just no way. And it's just like, when I called Sean O'Malley's fight on the Contender Series in 2017, he was like, I think I'm going to be a household name. Did I think he was going to be a household name, like the skinny kid with a fro and whatever? But it's like he's had this personality that and it's him, but it's like you just don't know what's going to work, you know what I mean? And so he's cut through, and then Cowboy is Cowboy. There's no one thing. Colby's got his own thing going, and it's like him or hate him, he moves the needle. Nate Diaz is the total opposite. He's largely silent, but then when he speaks, everyone listens, and he smokes a CBD joint at open workouts. Like, there's no way to know what's going to cut through, but certainly, you still gotta kind of have a certain something, that's going to register with certain people. And I applaud those fighters that, because they're putting themselves out there, and that's not always the easiest to do. It's like I'm kind of in a forward-facing role, but I keep plenty of my opinions to myself so that I don't, shut off one end of the spectrum. Like, I'm here to call fights and hope the fans like it. But those fighters, it's like they're taking risks when they do that sort of stuff. So, when it works, it's a fun thing.
Last one, really quickly.
Mm-hmm.
You commentate a lot of fights with fellow fighters, but you haven't fought in UFC.
I haven't? Maybe one day.
Do you think it's inevitable that we will get a female commentator, in a position like yours, where they aren't a former fighter, but they will be like a commentator?
Oh, like a play-by-play announcer.
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, I don't know of the person right now, but I'd be stupid to say no, it's never going to happen. I mean, like I said, I'm not going to try to shut up. I love my job. I love doing it. Beth Mowens calls college football games and has called an NFL game, and I've worked with mostly women analysts, because if I'm working, I'm not the analyst or whatever. But I mean, there's I've seen women refs and coaches in the NFL and all that sort of stuff. I'd be silly to sit up here and be like, a woman couldn't do my job. It wouldn't sound right. No, absolutely. I mean, I don't know when it's going to happen, but it's got to happen at some point.
Cool.
Labby, any questions?
Good. Cool.
I drink coffee when I'm bored. You know what I mean?
Right.
I'm like, what else am I gonna do?
Before we talk about this week's card, we're still all kind of soaking in UFC 253, and I want to get your analysis on it, because I think what we're all trying to figure out is Israel Adesanya, did he just look that good, or did Paulo Costa have an off night or a bad game plan? What exactly did we see there?
Well, I think he looked that good because he had such a smart approach to it. He chopped those legs down so well. I mean, if you were in that arena to really feel those leg kicks, I mean, that'll stifle anybody's game plan. So I think that threw Costa off, and then he never got started. I think his game plan was to go out and kind of mess with him a little bit, but the whole time he was getting chopped, and he even admitted it afterwards to his coaches how badly his leg was hurting. And then from there, once Izzy's got you hurt for a second, he's just going to capitalize on it. But I also think, it was a little bit of, okay, let's go get him, man. This is what you do, the eraser. You go after people. You overwhelm them with your strikes, and he didn't do that.
Yeah, I think that's what I think most people were excited about, was aggression and power. So I guess if you're trying to put a game plan together over what you think it would take to beat Adesanya, is that aggression and that power the right thing, or what is somebody going to need to finally beat this guy?
I mean, I think you have to look at what Gastelum did, right? I mean, we're talking about how he's picked apart all these people, but Gastelum at least put up one hell of a fight with him, busted him up, hurt him, and it was his aggression, getting in there, throwing punches, getting through that storm. You can't let him get comfortable for a second. And I know that's way easier said than done, right? Oh, just get in his face. Well, he's a good counter striker too. So if you just rush him, in a unsafe manner, he's going to clip you with his hands too, because he sits back. We talked about in all the pre-show stuff, the way he rocks back and throws that left hook. It's the same hook, the same exact posture that he knocked down and eventually knocked out Robert Whittaker with. The same thing. He's got them flexible hips and that back. I mean, a lot of guys try to do that. They'd end up just falling down or hurting themselves.
Right.
But he's got the ability.
So since 253, Jon Jones' name has come up a lot, right?
Yeah.
Both in association with Adesanya, in association with Jan Blachowicz.
Ooh.
And then, of course, there's still the talk about him going to heavyweight as well. So from your point of view, like, what do you think is the most exciting option for Jon Jones? Like, what's the biggest thing for the sport? What would you want to commentate on?
That's a good question. What would I want to? I'd like to see Jon try his hand at heavyweight first.
Yeah.
You know, he just posted that video of him smashing squats and things like that. So obviously, I think that's where his mind's at right now. I think it would be a big transition. Where would they meet? They would have to meet at 205, right? Izzy would have to go up. Jon's, I don't think, ever going to make 185 at this point. So I'd like to see some of these crazy fights for Jon at heavyweight. And then, I mean, you know, Izzy's going to dominate this division, I feel, for a little while, and then I see a super fight, but I think not yet. I think they're both right for Jon to be talking the way he's talking. He's being smart. He's setting it up, and Izzy, you know, blah blah blah. But he's right. You know, but now Jon Jones is coming to him a little bit, right? So the ball's kind of in Adesanya's court right now, which is good for him.
Nice. Let's talk about this weekend's card. Holly Holm, Holm-Aldana, obviously a big fight in that division. As you're starting to break this thing down and study the tape, like, what's most intriguing to you about this? Like, what's going to set the terms for how this plays out?
My God, I think if Aldana can use that boxing, man, I think for that weight class, she's got some of the best power in that division. And Holly's just so tricky, such a veteran with the kicks. I expect her to use a lot of side kicks, keep her at range, throw head kicks, be sneaky, and mix in takedowns as well. I think we're going to see her really utilize her wrestling in this fight too. Because that left hook that she landed against... she just fought this weekend. Yeah, Vieta. I mean, you don't see those kind of knockouts that often,
right,
especially from punches, right? You see it from head kicks. Obviously, you put a shin upside in somebody's head, they're going to get knocked out. But to see just a beautiful step-in left hook, and she's got some of the sickest boxing in that division.
Yeah, no doubt. Jermaine Durandame and Juliana Pena, another really intriguing fight there as well. Pena, you know, the time off, the time away, like, where did she stand? I mean, how are you seeing this fight? I mean, it's such a clash of styles, and like I said, a former champ versus somebody who's dangerous but was away for a long time. So what are you seeing the keys in this fight?
I think it's going to be that. I think it's going to be Pena trying to use, you know, jiu-jitsu and wrestling, use her striking to get in, but I don't think anybody really wants to sit on the outside with Jermaine and make it a Muay Thai kickboxing fight. So I think it's really going to come down to where is the takedown defense of Jermaine at. We saw when she fought for the belt that she had some success in getting back up, but that's not enough to win a fight. Being able to get back up and then not score any damage doesn't do anything, right? So you've got to be able to get up and hurt your opponent and make them fear going back in and level changing on you. So I think it's going to really play out there is what happens when it goes to the ground, and what happens in those times in between when Pena's trying to level changes. Can she use her knees? Can she kind of try to stifle those takedowns before she's in on the hips, right? A lot of times when people work on the wrestling defense, they start, okay, they're on my hips, what do I got to do here? I think for her, it's going to really be a prevention of not making a grappling match.
Right. Any other names that are standing out for you, whether it be something you've seen on tape or, you know, or a discussion you've had? I mean, any other fights that may be under the radar?
One of the fighters I really like is that Casey Kenny. I think is a really exciting kid to watch on this card, and he's got a great matchup. I think those guys are going to go at it, and it's going to be an all-out brawl for 3 rounds, in my opinion, and potentially one of the fight of the nights on that card. And anytime Carlos Condit is on the card, I don't care what his latest fights have been, the natural-born killer's fighting. I'm tuning in. I've been a fan since WEC. I've been a training partner and somebody that, you know, has experienced the training room with him many, many, many times. I've been head kicked by him and beat up by him for years. So, and Court McGee, one of the toughest guys, and just always brings it.
Yeah.
Oh, you ain't getting Court McGee out of there without one hell of a fight. So that's one that stood out when I was looking at the card again today. That, yeah, I love that matchup. I know it's, you know, 2 veterans, but sometimes those fights end up being just an all-out bloodbath.
Question. Last thing for me, I got to ask about you fighting. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, you know, you temporarily retired, then said, heck with that. No, I'm still looking for fights. So, what's the update right now?
Man, you know, I don't know. There's only a few names that I'd even be interested in coming back to fighting. It's the top guys. You know, Hooker, Ferguson. Obviously, Michael Chandler's going to be coming here to Fight Island to be a backup, but. Hopefully that doesn't happen, right? I think we can all agree that we don't want that to happen. You know, it's good that it's in place. God forbid something goes down, but that's a fight that I would like to come back for December or early next year. And right now, I'm basically a triathlete at this point in my life. I'm running every day, swimming every day, and biking every day. So I've already found my backup plan for when I do decide to officially retire. Is I plan on trying to do Ironman in my future. It's something that I can relate to the mindset of a fighter. I become I wouldn't say friends, but I haven't met the guy yet. But a triathlete from Canada, Lionel Sanders, is a guy I've been chatting back and forth with. So I can't just not do athletics. I can't do something because I've always trained. I've always done something. So right now I'm just staying in great shape. I'm the lightest. I was 179 after a run the other day, which, to give you perspective, I'm not 179 normally until 10 days out from a fight. And that's if my weight's good, maybe 180. So to see that, I mean, that's after a hour and a half run, but still the weight's down. And if those,
Featherweight, maybe.
yeah, no way. I'm sucked out of my mind when I hit 179. So there's no way. Actually, it kind of discourages me from, oh shit, no wonder 55 is so hard. I can run for 2 hours straight and have low body fat, and I'm still barely breaking 180.
Is there like a date you got to make this call by though? Is there like an expiration date where you go like, man, I'm either fighting or I'm not?
No, I feel really healthy because I haven't stepped foot in an MMA gym in probably 2 months. I haven't grappled, I haven't sparred. I've been hitting a lot of pads and just doing tons of cardio. I think I need to get back into it. I need to start grappling and helping my teammates back home. But I look at some of these gym pictures, and I'm supposed to be doing all these commentary shows where I get COVID tested, several times over and over again. And then I look at the mat full of these young kids, and there's like 30 kids on the mat. And I'm like, I see a problem all over this area right now. So I've just been trying to mentally push myself in the endurance department for the moment.
Did the UFC come to you about Michael Chandler at all? Because I heard they were still trying to book him in a fight.
No. Nope.
Would you have accepted it if they did a couple of weeks ago?
Well, I would have at least, I would have asked when the date was and talked to the team and figured out a training camp potentially. I've made it known that that's a fight I'd be interested in. I even texted Dana White when he first was talking to Chandler, saying, "Hey, if you need somebody to introduce him to the big show, then I'd be interested." And I have no disrespect towards Chandler. I think he's a great athlete, and I'm actually excited that he's over because that what if has always been there. And I'm glad that the UFC is doing that and being more interested and kind of reaching out to these other champions and bringing them over. It's having better guys. Who cares where they're from? If they're good, they're good. Let's have them compete against the best guys in the world. So
going back to Izzy versus Costa,
yeah.
Do you think, a lot of people saying, Paul didn't rush in like he did, he didn't go berserker, but do you think there's an element of every time he went to go in, Izzy fainted and he bit,
oh, yeah.
He bit on every feint that Izzy threw, basically?
Yeah, that's why I said first and foremost, I think it was all Adesanya's he's such a good striker, and all he's got to do is that, and you're like, oh, fuck, what's he going to, and then he started using his jab. After the leg kicks, the jab was there, and I knew that head kick was coming. It's easy for me to see it sitting on the outside analyzing it. For Costa, you're worried about that leg, and then funk. He's lucky he didn't get knocked out with that head kick. It kind of glanced off the eyebrow and split him wide open. Imagine if that had kind of gone across the neck or the jaw. That would have been it right there.
Do you think that, Paul, I know we were talking about after, it's like, you threw a lot of kicks.
Yeah.
This isn't something you kind of expected from him. And when he closed the distance, got him against the cage, he just threw a kick, and obviously
Yeah.
Izzy can just scoot right outside. Is that because he didn't know what to do at that point, or is that because he was worried the counter punches are coming at him?
Yeah, I think he was just so overwhelmed in there a little bit in this fight from the get-go. Especially when there's a lot of trash talk, there's just a lot of hype behind it, and then you're finally in there, and it's time to seal the deal. It's tough, right? Because I see it from his point of view too. When you're in there and you're facing these guys, it's easy to talk about what you're supposed to do, but once that guy's in front of you, to pull the trigger, to get past that range that Adesanya has, he's got such a reach on him, and I just think he couldn't find a way in. And in hindsight, I think I should have known that was going to happen from the beginning, but I got pulled in from Costa's hype and everything that was going on. I always had in my mind Izzy winning that fight, but I thought it was going to be so much more of a battle than it was.
Is it fair to say, and I don't want to put this on Costa because Izzy's so good, but is it fair to say that, pretty young in his career, undefeated, and then he goes in there suddenly, oh, I'm fighting for the world title. There must be a moment where the pressure, you know, you can either rise
You could
to
see
or you
it.
can choke, right?
Yeah, you could
felt
see
like,
it.
I felt he looked nervous coming in personally, but
Yeah.
do you think that's a... Did that ever happen to you? Was there ever a fight where you got in there and the nerves suddenly hit you and you suddenly felt the arms and legs got heavy?
Well, I would say the first round with Dan Hooker was definitely an example of that crowd getting to me. You know, I didn't do anything except get punched in the face and kicked in the calf for the first 5 minutes of that fight, and then I kind of, in between rounds, I woke up, but he never really got that opportunity. You saw his corner trying to, you know, get him alive in between the first and the second, but at that point, the damage I think was done.
Do you think there's a possibility that Izzy's now showing where Costa's weak? So, like, if you can set traps for him, strike for him, like, I'm thinking more a technical guy like Till, someone who can be technical, you might be able to diffuse the bomb that's coming your way.
Yeah, I think there's definitely some other guys in that division that would have a much better chance, especially Till, because he's much longer, he's taller, and he's a striker by heart, whereas Costa's a striker by heart, but it's more of that boxing style, you know, attack the body. But to do that to a guy like Izzy, you're not getting in there to hit that liver. You're not getting in there to rip to the body and then come up to the head. He's not going to let you just do that. There was 1 second, like you're talking about, up against the fence where it's like, oh, that was his opportunity, and just never happened. I remember that's where we were like, oh, he closed the distance, and then nothing happened with it.
Right. Last one for me. If you're the UFC now, do you put Costa against the loser of Till Hermanson, the loser of Whitaker Cannonier, or against Kelvin Gastelum?
I like that Kelvin Gastelum fight, now that you say that, just because I think that's a fight where he can display that striking style, and Kelvin, he'll go right in there and meet him with it, you know. And we also might get to test that black belt that he's wearing around his waist if he fights Gastelum, because he will mix in his wrestling. He will take him down at some point. I like that fight. Yeah, man, he should be calling the UFC. Sean Shelby, watch out, man. Watch out.
As a fellow fighter, what did you make of Israel Adesanya's celebration, the dry humping, and getting Captain Eric's face and everything at the end?
To be honest, I totally missed the dry humping in the moment. I think I was so excited about the fight that it wasn't until we were all having breakfast afterwards. I was like, he humped him? They're like, yeah, you didn't see that? I was like, no, I totally missed that. Listen, would I do it? No. Is it a little disrespectful? Yeah. Was Costa probably disrespectful in some of the antics and stuff leading up to that fight? Yeah. So I think in that fight, it was kind of fair game, man. The winner of that was gone a showboat. If Costa knocked him out cold in that first round, you don't think he'd have been running all over that cage doing something a little I don't know if he would have dry humped him, but he would have done something. Yeah. So I mean, yeah, it's not my style, but that's not my job to.
So do you think the people that found it offensive, do you think it's a little overblown?
I think, well, don't get me started on what I think about the people sitting at home and their computers and what's this, and yeah, I mean, not you guys. You guys are here, you're working, your media outlets, but the Twitter fingers, man.
Sure.
I don't care what they think. Yeah.
Last one, you don't have to give a prediction, but we lost obviously the Tony Khabib fight, but I think a lot of people view Justin Gaethje as maybe Khabib's just a tougher challenge in general.
Yeah.
Were you in that?
Yeah, I am. Yeah, I think that wrestling, right? I think whoever is going to give Khabib the biggest challenge and really be able to maybe win has to have really solid wrestling. And I think if Justin wanted to, which we all know he's not going to do, if he wanted to wrestle back and maybe score his own takedowns, I think he could. And that's Chandler's defense, too, for if he had to step in there. It's like, look, I'm one of the few guys that I think I could take him down as well. And wouldn't that flip, everything on its head if he came out and just blast doubled Khabib? But he's not going to. He's not going to.
Talk about the Twitter thing, the haters and all of that. I see that sometimes you go back and forth with some
Yeah.
opinions.
Yeah.
Is that for fun? Like you're like quarantining? Let me answer some people.
It's always when I am stuck somewhere, right? People think, oh, I got you hyped up, bro. You're wasting your time. I'm like, man, I'm in a 48-hour quarantine talking trash. Like I have nothing else to do. I've already talked to my family, so you're the next thing on my agenda. I do get carried away, and everyone that I love and that's close to me is like, stop doing it. You're just making, you're giving them shine that they don't need, and they're right. But I'm old by any means, but I'm from the school of if you talk shit, you're going to get it talked back to you. I can't punch you in the face because if you said any of that to my face where nobody's looking, I'm punching you right in the face. It's just, it's how it would be. Some of the things that people have said to me, you would never come up to any of these athletes, not just me, but any of these guys, even the people attacking Adesanya. It's like, go one-on-one when you're staring up at that guy and tell him that, you know, he's a disrespectful loser, non-martial artist. It's like, come on now. I hate it.
Yeah, definitely Twitter makes people stronger and like braver. That's why they say all of that.
Oh man, I know. I do have to stop, and I really am vowing to start responding more to my fans, like, because I get I get a lot of love as well from people. It's not all trash talk out there, but I feel like I need to put those people in the place. So I apologize to the fans and the friends out there who are also trying to get my attention, and I'm wasting my time on the haters. So to all my fans out there, if this can get out there, I love you guys. Thank you so much for all the support.
Didn't a fan once say to you, like, some shit, you said you wouldn't say that to my face, and then he said, that's correct. Yeah.
Oh, that went viral. Yeah, that was all over the place. That guy said the right thing at the right time, where I was like, you would never, he's like, you're correct, you would kick my ass. That's why I'm saying it on Twitter. And I was like, fair enough. And yeah, it definitely blew up way more than I mean, all the meme pages, all these pages, all the kids are looking at these days. Yeah, it was everywhere. I was like, holy crap, I didn't expect this to to escalate.
I'm gonna go back to what you said in the beginning about the Ironman. Are you interested in the full one or half?
So it's a good question, because when I'm in my room right now, when I'm not studying for these fights, all I'm watching is triathletes training for Ironman, the 70.3, the Olympic levels. I would probably start with an Olympic level just triathlon, which I could do, I think, next week if I had to. Like the swim's not that long. The swimming is by far where I need work. And I also need to get on the road with the bike more, because I've been doing a lot of indoor training and things like that. But Zwift, you guys know the online platform Zwift. You probably guys have no idea what I'm talking about. But I'm getting into that, and I've got the guys from Wahoo, which they make heart monitors, they make bikes, they make the attachments for the bikes. They're actually dropping off a brand new bike trainer for me when I get back. The screens, the fans, they've like kind of hooked me up. But eventually I want to do a full one. I want to test that, but 112-mile bike and then off of the bike to run a marathon's a bit of a stretch for me right now. I'd have to absolutely put MMA in the back window before I could even think about doing something of that magnitude.
So you think you're better at running? I think it would be.
I'm decent at running. It's just I've got some nagging things that I'm trying to fix before I can start running marathon. But today I ran 7.5 today on the treadmill. I was outside on the streets the one night. I ran 9 miles, and that was absolutely death in this heat. I biked for 2 hours the other day on these crappy road bikes that they're running us. They're great for what they're for. Yeah. But if you're really trying to put in miles, then like I'm shifting my chain pop twice, so it's been
Right here? My pop's
on the hill trying to climb, and I'm trying to downshift, and it's like clang, clang, and my hands are covered in oil and grease. But yeah, I love it. So yeah, if these guys don't want to fight, I have no problem walking away from it, man. I made my run. I tried with COVID and everything that's going on, making it even more complex and no fans. It's like, if that sold out arena in Auckland, New Zealand had to be my last show, no problem. If it's not, no problem. But you know, I'm making money. I'm not fat and happy. I'm lean and happy for a change. That was always the concern about when I was going to retire, is what am I going to do for myself? Because I'm just going to be 300 pounds and not know what to do with myself. So I found my outlet. So now I can at least be like, all right, I know what I'm doing afterwards.
Hey, Paul.
Hey.
How you doing, mate?
I'm good.
Good,
How are
good.
you?
I'm good, thank you. We're all good. So 8 years ago, you fought a gentleman named Karma Worthy.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, he's been recently signed to the UFC.
Right.
What do you think to his evolution, and how do you think you pair up with him now?
Oh, man. Well, to his evolution, I think he's just always been that guy that goes out on his shield, as we've seen him do. He either goes out there and he's going to smack you around and make it exciting, or he's going to lose that same way. But I think he's kind of dialed things in and gotten a little sharper on the feet because he was a little reckless back in the day, especially when I fought him. But yeah, we were both, he was from Pittsburgh, I was from Philly. We were both kind of the young guns on the scene, only had a few fights each. And I mean, that was my fastest knockout. So I still, he makes me look better every day. Every day he wins a fight, I'm like, yes, Kama, keep winning those fights. And obviously, if we matched up now, I mean, I still think I win that fight 100%. But yeah, hopefully that doesn't happen because that means I'm taking quite a few steps back. And I'm definitely not coming back for Kama Worthy. All respect to him, but yeah. But yeah, that's, forever ago. I think it was my third ever fight, third pro fight. Silenced that crowd pretty good that night. That was nice.
I just wanted to get one more while I'm here.
Yeah.
I just wanted to get your expert opinion on the psychological effects going into a fight, knowing that it might be your last one.
Like, if I was to go into it, take another fight,
Yeah.
I thought if I lost the Hooker fight, I knew that might be my last fight. I didn't say anything. I didn't make it a thing, and I didn't even tell my coaches. But
does that play on you though? Like before you go in, like does it affect like how you do fight? Do you know?
It just made me want to leave it all in there, which I think is a good thing, right? But I'm not one of those guys that because it might be my last one, I'm thinking, you know, when the going gets tough in there, I'm like, I don't need this anymore. It was never like that. So, it's a fist fight to me. Like, anytime I'm in there fighting, I'm never going to be like, oh, I'm done. So, it didn't really have any negative effects on me. If anything, I think it had positive effects to just make me push even harder. But, yeah, it's a tricky situation. You know, you want to get ranked, you want to get as high in the rankings as possible, and then you realize it's tough to get fights. You know, it's tough to get what you want because everybody in the top 5, top 10, we all want the same thing. So I'm just finding that a bit of a challenge. I've been offered fights. I'm not going to lie. I've been offered fights where guys are ranked lower than me, and I said no.
Interesting. Thank you very much, man.
Thank you, man.
Okay.
Cool?
That's it, sir.
All right, thank you, guys. Drink this coffee now.
Found you some milk.
I know. Thank you for that. Appreciate that.
How are we? Thank goodness I can take that damn thing off.
But Dan, I gotta ask, back here on Fight Island, does it feel like returning to the scene of the crime, so to speak? I mean, this was kind of like a big thing last time you were here, right?
You know, I was only here for a few days last time, and it was one of the most stressful fight weeks I've ever had, just because of, you know, everything around it. I mean, I kind of like to plan my fight weeks and know what to expect, and so it was much easier coming back because I know the hotel and everything like that. But the whole quarantine and all that, it was kind of difficult to get my head around it, and then trying to get my sleep on track as well. It was just an interesting week, a good challenge for me, and then working through the night's always fun, and you know, all the things that came off the back of it.
Well, I was gonna say, so the Herb Dean situation, obviously that was such a huge, I mean, that was the biggest story in the sport for a while. 2 months later, what do you take out? Like, what lessons do you take out of what happened that night, and you know, maybe what you would have done different, or where we need to go forward? Like, what lessons do you take out of the whole thing?
I mean, the truth is, if I go back to that same day without having prior knowledge of that circumstance and that experience of the last Fight Island, I probably wouldn't have done anything different. You know, if you go back to the Herb Dean when he was refereeing CB Dollaway, I was standing up yelling "Stop the fight" during that one as well. I mean, and that should have been stopped a lot earlier. The reality is, I have nothing against Herb. He's refereed me a bunch of times, and I know he's a good referee. He's a reliable referee, but he's human. I make mistakes. I say left when it's supposed to be right. I say stupid things in commentary. I called Gunnar Nelson Rick Story once. You know, we're human. We make mistakes. The problem is when you're a referee and when you're looking after the well-being of a fighter, you've got to be on point. And at the end of these fights, I just think sometimes we need to review some of these circumstances to make sure that, you know, if someone needs to be held accountable for a mistake, then they are. And what concerned me about that, truth is, I spoke to Herb after the event. We exchanged respect. I told him that, you know, I don't want to fall out with him. I don't want to yell at him on the broadcast. Certainly not. And that was my mistake. I shouldn't have yelled at him on the broadcast because I'm there to objectively give my opinion on what's going on. And I was giving my opinion to Herb during the fight, which obviously wasn't welcome. But when he released the video afterwards, which was very kind of nonchalant and like, well, I'm the gold standard of refereeing, so, you know, if you're going to put your Superman T-shirt on, etc., that concerned me. Because that means that he's not learning from that mistake and he's going to continue making that mistake. And you know, if I'm a fighter and I make a mistake, I've got to learn from that mistake, or I'm going to get knocked out or submitted in the same way. Unfortunately, the referees go on and I don't know whether they're held accountable or not, and that's the issue.
Well, that's what I was going to ask, because I think we all agree that referee accountability, transparency, education, it's all important. Like you said, I mean, you guys are both passionate about the sport, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you both love what you do. So, I mean, are you going to try to like stay involved in like talking to commissions and trying, or did the spotlight of all that make you go, let me just back away a little bit and make sure these checks are coming in on the broadcast? You know?
No. You know me. I always say this. I love mixed martial arts. I love the UFC. I work for the UFC. I work for mixed martial arts. I'm here for the sport. I'm here for the fighters. I'm here to protect the industry because I'm an ambassador for the UFC, and above all, that is my priority. We're all here because of mixed martial arts, and we've been through the years, you in particular, have been through the years of this should be banned, this and that, and it's dangerous, etc., etc. I just don't want to go back to those days. I don't want to go back to those days because it takes the shine off the spectacular performances of the fighters. I don't want the story out of the last Fight Island to be me yelling at Herb Dean. I want it to be the fantastic win that Francisco Trinaldo got over Jai Herbert, or many of the other performances that we got on that night. I'm not here to fall out with people. Not now. Now I'm not a fighter as much anymore. I'm not here to fall out with officials or anything like that. I'm not. But my opinion still stands. If a mistake's made, we need to hold these refs accountable.
Very good. Talking about great performances, UFC 253, Israel Adesanya, fantastic victory. But give us your analysis on it, because I think everybody coming out of that is trying to figure out, did Adesanya just look that good, or did Costa have a bad night or a bad game plan? What did you take after watching that fight?
I'd be interested to know what Costa's game plan is. I think it'd be difficult to kind of get inside that camp and find out, because obviously they're going to plan on a rematch. They don't want to give anything away. What was interesting is when he went back to his corner after the first round, there was the feeling in the corner like he was doing the right thing. Now, I spoke about it in the War Room analysis that I did. I felt like Costa knows he's probably a 3-round fighter. He's probably got that memory of gassing on Tough Brazil in the first round, chasing that rear naked choke and running out of gas. And if you're a 3-round fighter and you're fighting over 5 rounds, you may not be able to elevate your conditioning to 5 rounds. You may just have to manage that energy system. So starting hard and going fast for 3 rounds and then having to fight with, when you're gassed and you're trying to defend yourself against Adesanya is not the smart thing to do. So if I was in Costa's corner, I would have probably said the same thing. Take it easy the first round. Don't give him too much to search on. Don't give him too much research. Don't give him too much to kind of figure out and set you up. But unfortunately, I just don't think that Costa had the operating system against Izzy to be able to understand what was going on when he was in the pocket. And you remember when Anderson Silva came into the sport, it was like witchcraft. He's in there and people just don't know what to do. We've got guys like Chris Lieben that come crashing forward, knocking people out. He couldn't lay a hand on Anderson Silva. And there's something very disconcerting about that. When you know that you normally close distance and hurt people pretty quickly and you can't touch them. I think it was 12 strikes he landed in the total fight. It was just a spectacular performance from Izzy. He manages range so well, and it must be very much like fighting Khabib. You can't really understand what his wrestling's like until he's got his hands on you. I think when you stand in front of Israel Adesanya, you can't really understand what that's like until it's there. And when it's there, it's too late. And you can bring guys in that are the same height, the same reach, they move the same, etc., etc. It's a different thing when it's a live fight, and when you've been through the travel and the weight cut and all that kind of stuff. I'd be interested to know more about Costa from his side without the animosity between the two, but I think he's going to hold those cards close to his chest.
Yeah, that makes sense. So let's go to the main event this week. Holly Holm, Holm-Aldana, obviously a big fight in that division, former champ, top contender. When you're breaking this fight down, what's standing out to you most? Like, what's going to dictate what ends up happening here?
Well, what's interesting is obviously we've got Holly Holm, who was a standout boxer before she crossed over to mixed martial arts, but really her strength in mixed martial arts is her kicking game. And then we've got Holm-Aldana, who really she models herself on a lot of those tough Mexican boxers from back in the day, and we saw that in a fight against Caitlin Vera, that the speed at which she covered distance, that left hook that she landed. I like a good left hook, you know me, and I can pick fault in most people's left hooks. That was pretty perfect. I watched it through a few times last night, slow motion, and as she lands, her hands in the right position, her hips are twisting, her feet are right. I think that she's going to try and close distance on Holly Holm and force her to box, and I think that's going to make Holly quite uncomfortable because she tends to like to bookend those, that range. Although she likes boxing, her kicking game and her clinch work is really what I think she's going to be using in this fight.
Nice. Last thing for me, speaking of the big left hook, come on, you've been teasing a long time, right? You always get asked. I used to get tired of hearing people asking you about it, but now, is there an expiration date on you fighting again, or is there still one left in the chamber for you?
I've always got a fight ready to go. You know me, I love fighting. I love it, and it's been a weird few years because I feel like I've been in MMA university. I feel like my knowledge has grown exponentially, and as I look back at my old fights, they make me cringe. Like really, they do. You know, even the good performances, I'm like, oh, I was reckless. I was slow. I was aggressive. I was overconfident. My ego was out of control at times. I mean, the Condit fight, I ran onto his left hook, and that was my fault, purely my fault. But the good thing is I've learned from all of those lessons. And yeah, I'm a bit older now. But when we're seeing guys like Cowboy and Sanchez in there still, and they're old as well, and they've taken some beatings over the last few years, and I haven't. I mean, my grey matter's solid, and I'm healthy. I've not drank for 22 years. You know what I mean? I just don't feel like a 38-year-old fighter because I'm not. I'm not a 38-year-old fighter. I was a 32-year-old fighter, and I'm a 38-year-old analyst. Stepping back in there as a 38-year-old fighter, I'm a different animal entirely. And with some of the names that are popping back up in the sport right now, I mean, there are some mouth-watering matchups out there, and I would definitely jump in with a couple of them.
Are you having discussions with them at all?
I haven't started yet, but this is the first time I've been back in the UFC bubble in a little while since Fight Island last time. So we'll see. There'll be some conversations this week. I've got a pen ready to sign a contract anyway.
You mentioned Don Cerrone, Diego, and even grouping Tyron Woodley into that. Dana White keeps saying he needs to have that talk with these fighters. So what do you think of when you watch their performances and you know what they can do, but then you show what they're putting out there in the octagon?
I don't know what the solution is because we're always covering new ground in mixed martial arts. You know, we're a 25-year-old sport, so the veterans in the sport, you know, I mean, it's unusual to see guys fighting at these kind of ages. I mean, look at Alistair Overeem and the experience that he's had. We're always going into unprecedented waters in mixed martial arts, and I think what we need to do is understand what we do with these veterans, with these high-level superheroes of the game, the likes of Diego and Cowboy and Tyron, and maybe not keeping them in the mix with all the contenders is the right thing to do. I mean, we talk maybe about masters divisions and that kind of stuff. I just think there are some really good super fights that we could have where we match these guys evenly with each other, so they're not taking on these up-and-comers. I mean, putting Diego in there with Michel Pereira was to build Michel Pereira from a fantastic knockout was what that looked like to me. And Diego's toughness kept him in the fight, but he had no business being in there with him. Diego's not going to make a title run. He knows that himself now. I just think we need to start matching these guys better with, you know, with other people of their same standing in the sport. And this is for the protection of those athletes as well, because if you then release Diego or BJ or Cowboy, whoever, someone's going to snap them up, and there'll be a snack for somebody else on a different event because they're going to get a killer, you know, a young 9-0 guy that's ready to take their head off. I mean, Jake Matthews got a great opportunity to fight Diego Sanchez, but it wasn't Diego Sanchez that he was watching when he was 11. You know what I mean? It's a different guy. I would like to see some of these older guys matched up against one another, and I think a veteran division would be awesome.
Do you think it is up to the UFC to have, as Dana White refers to it, that talk with them, like to kind of pull them back?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. I mean, Dana loves the fighters, and he has a responsibility to look after these guys that are working for him, and also under his care to an extent. And Dana does a good job with that. You know, we all remember what happened with Chuck Liddell, and that was the right thing to do. Fighters never want to retire. I've had a conversation with Conan Silveira, and he said he'd take a fight this weekend if he could. You know what I mean? It's like we love fighting, and we always see ourselves as the 18-year-old that's a spring chicken. There is a time when fighters do need to realise that Father Time's catching up with them, and what we do about that is, I mean, that's really Dana White's decision. But having a talk from Dana and being realistic about where their position is in the sport is a great thing for him to do.
And then you also mentioned like you wanted the shine to be on the martial arts, the aspect of fighting. What did you make of Israel Adesanya's celebration at the end with the dry humping and then running over to Captain Eric? And it seems to kind of ruffled a lot of feathers online.
Yeah, I mean, it was crass, is the truth. It was unnecessary and it was crass, and it's not good for the sport to be seeing those things. But at the same time, you know, we see a lot of the superstars, they stand out, they create headlines because of the things that they do. I mean, you know, he was urinating on the octagon in his UFC debut. You know what I mean? It's like we shouldn't be surprised by these things. There's a lot of animosity between these guys, and you know, we do act out when we're in these scenarios. When your adrenaline's up, you've just won the fight, you've got all this energy. I mean, how many times do you see people doing terrible dances after fights and stuff? I've done it myself. You don't know what you're saying in interviews because your adrenaline's going. You just blah. it happens. You know, sometimes it's difficult to keep control of yourself in those circumstances. But that's when you know, you see people, and when you see someone like that, and you kind of think, well, it wasn't in the spirit of martial arts, and really that's what we want to be seeing to represent the sport as a whole. But ultimately, you know, these people have to be their individual selves.
Dan, how you doing, mate?
Hello, mate.
First question is, I'm sure you stick to death of all of these questions about your comeback, but I am fascinated by the idea of you against Nick Diaz. Can you give me a 1-minute war room on how you see that going?
Okay. So obviously Diaz has got a high work rate. He's got an excellent ground game, and this kind of goes for both the Diaz brothers. They're a bit of a clone of one another. They've got a high volume of striking, and that is really what they use in place of their wrestling. You know, they don't grapple with people to the floor to then employ their jiu-jitsu. They beat them up on the feet until they level change or shoot or lower their head or whatever. I don't think I would see anything different from Nick Diaz. I think he would come out and he would try and slap me up like he did Paul Daly, and I think he would try and back me up against the fence and want to trade punches. I think the difference is that my hands are faster and I hit a lot harder, and I don't make bad decisions like I used to. So my head movement's much better now, and I just feel like I could manage range so much better against him than a lot of people do. But I mean, who knows? Who knows what Diaz is doing? He's going to be in good shape. He's got great conditioning. We know he's a good boxer. We know he's got a good jiu-jitsu. But ultimately, it comes down to the individual punches that land, and I feel like I could land the individual punches to do the damage.
Cool. So, as somebody who didn't start or really ever intend to get into punditry, analysis, and interviews, what tips would you give yourself if you could go back in time to your very first gig?
If I could go back to that first UFC London, I'd say, dude, you're going to make some mistakes. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. You're going to make some mistakes. It happens. I mean, fortunately, I was sitting in the seat octagon side in an arena that I'd already been knocked out in the first round. So it's, you know, I knew from that point it wasn't going to get any worse than UFC 120. So that kind of made things a little easier for me. But I mean, we make mistakes. I think that's the easiest thing easiest bit of information for me to pass on. Don't expect to be perfect, because you won't be. You're going to call people the wrong name. You're going to say stupid things. You're going to make mistakes. It is what it is. It's a high energy atmosphere. And the other thing people don't realize is when we're on a broadcast, we're working for a solid few hours. It's probably longer than any other commentator in any other sport. So if you stick a microphone in front of somebody's face and you let them talk long enough, they're always going to say something stupid. They're going to stutter. They're going to stumble over their words. Don't sweat it. Laugh at yourself.
Yeah, awesome. So lastly from me, can you let me know like the ethos behind your brand, Full Reptile, and what it stands for and what it means to you? It's
talking about the reptilian brain. That's where it originally came from. I mean, it's developed in various different ways, but you know, sometimes, and Robbie Lawler and Wanderlei Silva are always my two examples. Sometimes you get a fighter steps into the octagon, and they're automatically full reptile. They're automatically disengaging the old and the new mammalian brain, and they're going straight into that survival method. And that is a real strength in mixed martial arts, because when you train in the gym, I mean, you probably maintain about 20% of your skill. So what I think in my head is you kind of training your reptile in those circumstances, and that is what you're relying on to then react in those quick scenarios. If I've then got two different parts of my brain engaged, I've got this cross chatter which is slowing me down, and the best performances are when people are in that flow state. And I've only been there a couple of times. I mean, when Duane Ludwig caught me with that right hand and nearly knocked me out in that fight, I realized once I clinched him and got him up against the fence that I was working on autopilot. And then I'm kind of a passenger in my reptilian brain, allowing it to work for itself. So that's kind of what the full reptile thing is, to be fully in the reptilian brain.
Just one for me. I know, like, Conor McGregor doesn't like easy fights, but he called out Sanchez. Do you think he regrets that?
Yeah, I think he might. I mean, you know, he's gone back and he's reinforced it by saying he'd still want that fight, but who knows what Conor's thinking? I don't know. He loves a headline, and if a week goes by without him being in the headlines, he's going to do something outlandish to garner some attention. And I think that's what that was. I mean, it would be an execution to put Conor in there with Sanchez at this point. And I don't think Conor would really gain anything from it. You know, there are lots of other good fights out there. I mean, Poirier being one of them, but I would like to see that in mixed martial arts in the octagon, to be honest, at 155. Yeah, it was a weird thing to do, and I think when you've got that kind of stature, you've got to be really careful who you're calling out and how you're doing it, because it can really reflect badly on you. And I saw a comment from the Fight Disciples earlier today. Conor fighting Manny Pacquiao is not going to look good on Conor because everyone loves Pacquiao. You know what I mean? It's not going to be great for his brand, and he's going to have to play the heel in that one. So it's almost like he's taken on that role a little bit.
I was going to say, ask you to play UFC matchmaker for Costa next. If you had to pick out these 3 fights, you put it against the loser of Hermansson Till, the loser of Cannonier Whitaker, or Kelvin Gastelum.
I think Kelvin Gastelum's a very interesting one because I think they occupied the same kind of ranges. I mean, Gastelum is an excellent boxer. He covers distance very quickly, puts his hands together very well. Costa does the same thing, but obviously he's a bigger, more powerful individual for this weight class. I mean, there's no way Costa would ever make welterweight, whereas obviously Gastelum wasn't, potentially could be still a welterweight. That's the one that makes the most sense to me, especially because Gastelum's kind of floating around a little bit. The Cannonier Whitaker one's going to be a fascinating fight, and I could see either of them stepping in and taking on Costa next. But ultimately, I think we need to see Costa over 5 rounds. More than anything, it doesn't really matter who he's fighting. Whenever someone's stepping into a title fight, I always want to see them step on the scales at championship weight and be booked for a 5-round fight, even if it doesn't go 5 rounds, because it changes the way you train. And I felt like a lot of the hesitation from Costa in this recent fight was because he was kind of managing his energy systems, because he didn't want to be gassed with Adesanya in there.
Obviously, every time someone fights for a title and they come up short, they're sort of just disregarded almost immediately. Like, I feel like Costa's now, he's just wanting to rest. But, you know, we anticipated this berserker style from him. So if you now take that style didn't work because Izzy fainted him out and he couldn't get in. So who out of the other guys I just mentioned, like Cannonier, Whitaker, Till, and Hermansson, who could threaten Izzy if you had to pick one?
Well, I think there are 2 really interesting ones. I mean, don't get me wrong, a fight with Darren Till would be very interesting, but I think Darren needs a couple of wins in this division to position himself. Jack Hermansson would be a fascinating one because he's got a very unusual style. He's always very aggressive, but ultimately he wants to close distance and work that Joker team. And I think we need to see someone really challenge Izzy in the clinch and on the ground. And Hermansson might be that guy. I mean, he almost put Jacare out, and he did sub Brunson. So Branch, he sub Branch, didn't he not, with that Joker team?
Yeah, you got Gastelum as well.
Oh, yeah.
Not with the Joker.
Yeah, I think that would be an interesting one. If Cannonier comes through Whitaker, though, he's the first one to put in there for me, because the way that he fights, he walks people down very calm, and everything that comes he blocks. And the thing that Costa was missing this weekend was checking low kicks, and Cannonier blocks low kicks with his shins, and that is the quickest way to put somebody off kicking you, because the kicker almost always comes off worse when you block a kick correctly. I think Cannonier, I mean, he's the dark horse in this division, and the difference between him and Costa, as powerful as Costa looks, all of his wins are TKOs. He's not sparking people with one punch. Cannonier was doing that at heavyweight. I mean, that left hook that he landed on Cyril Askey knocked him out cold, and for him now transferring down to into middleweight, he's still got that punching power, but now he's not got that extra 40-odd pounds on his frame. He's just much, much faster with it. I think he's an interesting matchup for sure.
Is it safe to say that could be the fight that we thought Costa Adesanya could be?
Yeah, quite possibly, but it won't be as aggressive. It won't be as wild as what we were expecting from Costa. And I think that's what made us excited, is that we thought Costa was going to really pour volume onto Adesanya and back him up against the fence. I don't think Cannonier is going to do that. He's going to be far more calm and collected and pick his shots. But against someone like Adesanya, that's going to make me more excited because, I mean, you know, like I was saying before the fight, I just don't think Costa had the understanding of the striking range to cause Izzy problems. Whereas I think Cannonier, even if he's only got a small skill set, he uses it very, very well, and he understands the application of the techniques.
Going back to the mistakes during broadcast, what were the hardest names for you to pronounce? Because you see fighters all over the world.
You know, the most difficult thing is trying to settle on a pronunciation. That's been the biggest battle, because, you know, often we'll sit in a room with the other commentators and we'll go through the names and we won't agree. I mean, John Gooden and I, we could practically headbutt each other until we disagree on pronunciations, and it's still the same. You know, is it Kowalkiewicz? Is it Kowalkiewicz? Is it Blachowicz? Is it Blachowicz? I mean, you know, we get the name files through, but you could even listen to the name files and have a different interpretation. Just generally, the names are quite difficult. What I tend to do is I tend to go back into their early career and I look for fights in the region that they're from and hear the announcer, the MC announce their name in their native language, and then I get a good idea of really how to say it. But honestly, the Polish names have been the more challenging ones, really. But I'm kind of getting around it now. I still can't say Joanna's last name. Every time I see her, I go, Jędrzejczyk, Jędrzejczyk, and she's like, nope. So, you know, I'll get it eventually, but I think Joanna's is still the more difficult name for me.
Even more than Russian names?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know why. It's just all the C's and the Z's and the Y's put together. I look at it and it just doesn't make sense to me. It's very, very difficult for me to understand. But fortunately, the Polish fighters have been very forgiving of me. And Jan always laughs at me when I'm trying to say Polish names anyway. And my good friend Pavel gives me a hand when he can. But I'm not an expert at pronouncing names. I try to be an expert at breaking down fights, and unfortunately, I have to say fighters' names in that process, which does make me look a bit stupid sometimes.
The UFC always asks fighters to actually pronounce their own names the way they pronounce it.
Yeah.
Do you get those files to hear?
Yeah. Yes, we do. But a good example is Darren Till and Darren Stewart. They're from different ends of the UK, and the UK's tiny in comparison to some countries. So if I've got someone from the north and the south of China with the same name, Zhang, they're going to say it very, very differently. So do I say Darren, like Darren Stewart, or do I say Darren, like Darren Till? I have to say it how I say it, which is Darren, and that's kind of the middle ground. You know, like when I was in the US training, everyone was calling me Don because they thought that was what I was saying when I said Dan. It's, you know, it's a fun part of the sport. Fortunately, we get to speak to a lot of the fighters fight week, and if I'm unsure, this is why you see me announcing the weigh-ins sometimes on Friday mornings, because as the fighters are coming up, if I'm unsure, I say your name to me. Say your name to me as you'd say it to somebody else, and when they repeat it a couple of times, I can usually just make the same noise. Retaining it for the next day is the challenge, though.
All good?
All good?
Good.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, man.
Hey.
I saw you not that long ago.
I know, right?
So before we get to this week's card, we're still all kind of like reliving UFC 253 and Adesanya and trying to understand what happened there. When you looked at that main event, did you take away that Adesanya just had the most amazing night ever, or that Paulo Costa had either a bad night or a bad game plan? What did you take out of that?
From what I saw, he just got his leg kicked to shit. Like, yeah, sorry, can I cuss on this? Like, I keep getting in trouble for cussing. Yeah, he had a really good game plan. When I went back and watched, you know how Dana has the little videos of the warm up backstage before the fighter comes out. I watched Costa's warm up, and he has like a really narrow boxing stance, and his foot's kind of turned, his outside foot is turned in like that, and I could see like he like just presented his calf to Adesanya. So I feel like that was one of the, he either picked it up in tape, or when they were in the fight, he just picked up on it immediately, started hitting the calf. After the first two shots, I'm like, oh man, that must hurt. But then I realized it was just cupping marks. But then like the marks started getting more and more. They started multiplying. So that hurts, man. It really hurts. Like I in my fight with Nina Ansaroff, I got calf kicked, and she's not that big. And she only landed maybe three or four before I started checking him. But after the second round, my entire foot was numb. Like I couldn't really feel if my foot was going forward or not. And when you're that size and you have someone hit it, he must have hit it like 10 times in the first round at least. When you're that size and you have somebody hitting you with that police baton shin over and over again, it just deadens the entire leg. And I think one thing Adesanya said in his fighter meeting was that he can't respect Costa's poker face, and I think a lot of the fans were respecting Costa's poker face and wondering why he wasn't going forward when in fact he was hurt and just hiding it really well. So I think that's what happened. I think the leg kicks took away his mobility, but also opened up the head kick that he landed, also opened up just Adesanya being able to move in and out more freely because Costa couldn't chase him down as easily with that dead leg. And yeah, he just ended up doing that lean back, punch, and knocked him out.
Yeah. So the name that was brought up a lot after the card was Jon Jones, right? Both maybe with Adesanya, maybe coming back to get his belt from Jan Blachowicz, you said, or we still got this heavyweight option out there. So I guess you as a fight fan and an analyst as well, I mean, What's the most intriguing matchup out of all those? Like, what do you think is the most exciting to see Jon Jones do next?
Man, I just wanted to make a choice, you know? Like, figure which one do you want to do? I would love to see Jones at heavyweight. I feel like he started looking a little flat in his last two light heavyweight fights. And it just seems like maybe he wants to be big. Maybe he wants to have that weight on him. Maybe he doesn't feel like cutting. I'm not sure how bad his weight cut is, but you're always gonna have more energy if you have more lean muscle on you. If he was bouncing around all flabby and stuff, then maybe you would want to cut weight and have that like athleticism at light heavy. But it seems like he's gotten a little older. He has more old man muscle on him. I mean, I'm older than him, but you know, you know what I mean. I always call my muscle old lady muscle too. So I would love to see him at heavyweight, and I would love to see him, do that instead of like kind of going back and forth.
I get it. So we'll talk about this week's card. Holly Holm, Aldana, big main event. Obviously, big stakes there. I mean, it's going to have title implications. But when you break it down, like, what do you think is going to dictate what happens here? I mean, obviously, both very high-level strikers. So how does this thing play out? What's going to determine who wins this fight?
I think it depends on how well Aldana is able to handle Holm's pressure. I think judging from Holly's fight with Megan Anderson, she's probably going to try to pressure up against the fence and take her down. And I think that's probably the best bet for her, just because she isn't really a power puncher. She likes to land points and move a lot. And Aldana proved to be pretty good against that type of striker. So I feel like to shut her down, just getting her in the clinch, getting her up against the cage, trying to drag her down, trying to put her where no one's really taking advantage of her yet. Aldana did have pretty good ground game in some of her fights, so she'd have to be careful. But Holm's been doing this a bit longer than Aldana, so I feel like if she uses her veteran skills against her in that way, and just exploit the grappling department, then that'd be a good way for her to get the win. But I'm kind of rooting for Aldana. Like, I want to see her fight the champ. I think it would be nice to have a fresh face fighting for the title. And Aldana has power. She has that cool boxing style that I love. You know, I always try to go in there and just throw hands as much as possible. And yeah, Aldana has those hands. She's had them for a while, and I think she finally found the mark. She finally found that knockout button against a girl who's never been stopped before, which is even more impressive. So I'm happy for her. I love her origin story. I love the fact that she started as an artist and then started moving towards martial arts. It's like we have like the same like story. It came up in the same like year too. So part of me is rooting for her, but also, you know, Holm is a veteran. She's really great at what she does. So I'm just interested to see how it happens.
Yeah, no doubt. What's another, whether it be a fighter or, you know, whether it be because something you've seen on tape that you can't wait to watch, you think it's going to be exciting, or maybe a story or an interview that you've had to sit out to? What are some, a name or a fighter or anybody else's card that people need to pay attention to that maybe they don't, you know, aren't right now?
I'm trying to think. The Colt main actually threw me for a loop. I wasn't too familiar with those guys. But Costa, Johan Costa, is that how you pronounce it?
De Castro?
Yeah, De Castro. Oh my goodness, I just found out about him today, but I've been doing my research, and he's a beast, man. He's looked really good in his first like half a round with Greg Hardy, and all his fights before that, he just nails people with leg kicks, fast leg kicks. He has fast body kicks, and like for a guy his size, you usually don't see that explosiveness. So I'm actually really excited for that co-main. At first, I was like, why aren't the girls to co-main? But I'm actually excited for that, and the guy that he's fighting just presents his leg, you know, even worse than Costa presented his leg to Adesanya. He presents his leg out to be kicked. So I'm wondering if he's gonna just snatch it up and take it and try to get another leg kick KO. But obviously, I'm looking forward to the strawweight matchup. My last win was against Loma. Look for me, but I always kind of felt conflicted about fighting her because she has that pure Muay Thai style, and I always loved that about her. I remember watching her first fight in Invicta, and she just hit like maybe 50 Muay Thai sweeps on this girl who was charging forward, and it was so perfect, and you could tell she'd just done it a million times, and it was just really effortless. And I watched that fight, and I was like, I'm gonna start doing Muay Thai sweeps again. And then I had my fight with Hannah Cyphers and swept her and elbowed her. So thanks, Loma. Thanks for the inspiration. And Jingy Fry, she's another person who was coming up when I was in Invicta, and just to see them both get to this level is really cool. And yeah, I'm hoping for a great fight.
Last thing for me, I got to ask about your fighting career. I mean, it's been 2.5 weeks, so these lengthy layoffs. You can see you're out that line, all right? What is the plan? I mean, I know how frustrated emotionally you were at that. Now you've had a little chance to let it soak in. I mean, where do you stand right now? What is the next move for you?
It still sucks. I still felt like it. I don't know. I still felt like it should have gone my way. I still felt like I did everything in the 5th round that should have said, okay, it's a close round, but this person gets the nod. And it just is frustrating, but it's made me focus on what I can do to get closer to a finish. And that's what I said the last fight as well, but I feel like with the 2 in a row, it's a necessity. There's no way around it. I have to get the finish in my next fight, and that's kind of where my mindset is. And I feel confident that I can. I just have to put some more pieces together. I have to start working on taking it to the ground more, because strawweights don't usually get knockouts. So just being able to do that, I know my ground and pound is good. I know my top control is really good. It's just a matter of making the decision to take the fight there. So I feel more of a sense of urgency in the same way Michelle did when I knocked her around for 2 rounds. She felt that sense of urgency to take me down. And I know if I went for 18 takedowns, I'd get more than one. So I definitely feel like I should start just adding that into my game plan. It's going to open up my striking. It's going to open up the opportunity to finish on the ground as well. So yeah, that's where I'm at right now.
You posted today you have fight news coming soon. Anything you can share?
I don't think so, but it's not going to... I got a good one. I got a good one. And it's not going to be here, but it's a good one. So
Awesome.
Stay tuned.
Last one for me. So you said that you would like to see KARYN fighting the champ. Do you think she would get a title shot if she wins, or the winner from Jermaine versus Pena?
Well, Jermaine just fought the champ, so I don't think if Jermaine wins, it would be her. And Pena, she hasn't fought that often, so I still feel like people would want to see her fight at least one more time, unless it's a super dominant win. But I definitely feel like KARYN earned it more after her last fight against Ketlin. Like, I think Ketlin was going to be the next in line, and you could argue that KARYN should be fighting for the title after beating someone who was so dominant beforehand. So I think the winner of this fight should definitely be one of them who gets the next title shot.
What did you make of Izzy's celebration at the end with the dry humping and running over Captain Eric and all that stuff?
That was funny. I mean, why be mad about that? You know, the dry humping, there wasn't any penetration. He didn't actually smack him with anything. It was miming. He was doing aggressive miming. But he was excited, and I think this fight really got to him mentally. I think he had to dig deep into his zen state of mind and watch a lot of Naruto to really channel that inner ninja in him and beat up the bully. And then afterwards, he celebrated beating up the bully. I mean, yeah, I thought it was funny. I didn't think it was disrespectful obviously it was disrespectful, but I didn't think it was out of line considering the build up and everything. But yeah, I probably wouldn't have done it. Actually, I probably would have. Bitch fucking season, you know? Like, that's what it's all about. So, hey, what are you gonna
Do
do?
you think there's a little bit of a double standard of people that are up in arms about that? Or Izzy says, like, if you look at what Colby said and you look at what he's doing, you think there's a double standard of people getting all up in arms at what he does?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. You know, and I feel like there's always gonna be that group of people who are mad at one group of people but not mad at another. And I don't have to be explicit about what that is, but I think people just need to lighten up. Like, if you're not mad about the Colby thing, you shouldn't be mad at this. If you are mad about the Colby thing, maybe you can be mad at this. But for me, I was like, Colby thing was stupid. This was funny. So, I don't know. I guess I'm just a hypocrite. I don't know what to say about it. I have a different sense of humor, you know. The Colby thing didn't make me laugh. And that one did. And I don't know how to explain it other than dry humping doesn't offend a group of people. So, yeah.
And one final one. What did you make of Jon Jones tweeted he wants to go to the next anime convention and slap the first 10 people he sees?
Well, that's not going to be for a while, John. But that's pretty rude. You know, it would be really funny if in order to get in, he had to dress up. Yeah, that's funny. I don't know. He's just trying to get a fight, and I don't think anyone feels threatened by that. I don't know. How was it received?
You got 4,000 retweets,
Okay, so people liked it.
30,000 likes.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Yeah, John's trying to be the bully. He's trying to get Adesanya to take the bait. Yeah, I think it's smart of him. But, you know, do that, you might get dry humped.
Cool.
Cool. All right.
Thank you.
Yay.
So, we're all still kind of buzzing over after 253,
Yeah.
you know, and now what we're trying to figure out is, did Israel Adesanya look that amazing on that night, or did Paulo Costa have a bad night or a bad game plan? So, in your view, what exactly did we see that night?
I think we saw a little bit of both that night. I think we saw Israel at a really high-level performance, and I think we saw Bohashinia that maybe wasn't well adjusted to the time here. I did speak with his coach, Eric Albarracin, afterwards, and he said that Paulo really didn't sleep that much the night before, which is a real bummer. He had only gotten a couple of hours of sleep. So while I don't think we necessarily saw the best Paulo, you know, I do think we saw the best Israel. You know what I mean? And so I think it was bad luck for Paulo. And also, honestly, John, like, he hasn't been that active, right? One fight each year for the last 2 years. Israel has a little more momentum coming into it. So to me, I just felt like it was a big ask to come over here on a time shift after a layoff like that and then perform at that high level, especially after you also built it up and like chalked it up so much, you know? So I think it was a combination of a lot of difficult circumstances for him. And Israel just looking fantastic.
Yeah. So a name that was coming out a lot afterwards was Jon Jones, right? Yeah. In association with Adesanya, in association with Jan Blachowicz, or still maybe the heavyweight title fight or something like that. So I'm curious, like, from your point of view, do one of those seem like the bigger fight or the more exciting fight? Like, which one do you think, like, should happen next?
Yeah, I think I thought it was kind of cheeky how, you know, John's like, y'all mind if I just snatch my belt back, you know? To see that legendary Polish power against Jon would be incredible because I do think Jan could pretty much knock out anybody. But I think the sexier fight is Adesanya versus Jon, just because stylistically they're both so phenomenal. Not to say that Jan isn't, but you know what I mean? I feel like that's the one that's going to be more stylistically interesting, and both of them can talk such a good game too. I mean, like, because Jon can jaw, and if it was Jon and Jan, you know, Jan has a great sense of humor, but you wouldn't get that build-up the same way either. I think if it was Jon and Israel, that would be pretty epic.
So looking at this week's card, Holly Holm, Aldana. Obviously the stakes there are pretty big in the division. What do you think is going to be the key? Like when you're watching tape,
right.
Like what do you think is going to determine how this fight plays out?
Well, it'll be interesting because if I'm honest, I really just want them to square up and bite down and just wail, like throw punches. That's all I want. And I kind of hope Aldana brings back the boxer in Holly. Like, she's been kicking so much, and she's great at that. And obviously, the head kick won her the championship. But I would love her to move a little less. Like, I hope Irani can cut the cage off, octagon off, and get her to just bite down and throw down. Like, I would love to see the last 5 minutes of Holloway Lamas between those two ladies. You know what I mean? Especially I don't know, like, they're both so talented. Like, they have knockout power. Like, we don't get to see that many knockouts in women's MMA. So I think both of these women have the potential to do it. They both have incredible takedown defense too, though. So I think the difference maker will be, I don't know, man, who lands more, right? Because I know Holly's ground game has been getting better, and so maybe she would shoot for a takedown, but I believe Irani has the highest takedown defense or so. So good luck, good luck.
Nice. Last thing for me, I want to ask you, like, other names on the card, like
Yeah.
fights that maybe are flying on the
Yeah.
radar, whether it be, somebody that you've spoken to, that they
Right,
have a great
right.
story, or a fight that you think is going to be just exciting. Like, what are some names
Yeah.
of fights that people should pay attention to that maybe they're not?
Well, I mean, I'm a huge Carlos Condit fan, and so I know there's, sometimes these kind of like legacy fights, or I don't know what we want to call them anymore now, but when you have Court and Condit, it's like they're both good dudes, but I really, no disrespect to Court, but I would love to see Carlos get a win again. Like, this guy has had some hella bad luck. I remember being there in Vancouver, right, when he fought Damian, and it was just like, 63 seconds later, you're like, he didn't even get to fight. You know what I mean? Like, win or lose, I just want to see Carlos be able to throw down and have an old school natural born killer fight. And also, obviously, I do want to see Jermaine Durandamy and Juliana Pena. Again, with I wish Juliana had been a little bit more active. I mean, obviously, she took time off to have the baby and everything. But, after you win tough and stuff, it's like nice to see them succeed more. So I think she and Jermaine are going to have a good fight. And I'm lying if I don't say that those women's fights often interest me more. And I like Luma Lukbunmi too. I think she's exciting. So yeah, I would say those are the ones that I'm probably most looking forward to.
You mentioned you heard that Paulo didn't really rest that much.
Yeah.
Not to reveal any information.
Sure.
I know, but if you could attribute that, is that nerves? Is that failing to adjust the new schedule? What happened that made him unable to rest in the way that Israel perhaps did?
Yeah, from my understanding, throughout the camp, Paulo didn't sleep that much. This is, I spoke with Eric in the restaurant, the day after, and he kind of said he had some issues with sleep, and that he doesn't sleep a lot, so maybe he doesn't really allow himself that recovery time. So part of it, I think, is a general tendency for him in this camp, they were saying. But then coming here, obviously, yeah, getting on this clock was difficult. But, also, again, Eric kind of told me there were some things that they knew in camp that they maybe needed to change that they just didn't really fully address. You know the case. Remember when Weidman was winning, and then he lost, and he's like, okay, now I can make reassess some things that I knew I needed to fix. So Eric was sort of saying basically that, like he knew there were some things during camp that were issues that they could have addressed or should have maybe addressed, but now that they know that the outcome wasn't what they hoped for, they'll really have to go and do it. But look at the first loss for somebody. It sucks to be in front of the world and have it be for a title fight, but it's also great that your first loss was for a title fight. Like, how big a baller are you that your title fight was your first loss? So I just hope that Bohashinya just really grows from that and learns from that. I mean, everybody else lost to Israel too, so buck up, soldier,
What did you make of Israel Adesanya's celebration at the end with the dry humping and getting Captain Eric's face?
A lot of times I'm supposed to be offended by things.
Sure.
Let's just put it that way. And a lot of times I'm not. So for the circumstances, I think it was appropriate, if that sounds right. Like, just everything that had been building up to it, look, I love good sportsmanship, right? I love that. I love when they hug it out after. But I'm not gonna lie, if you put it this, if that was me, if you talked mad crap to me and then I beat your ass, I'm gonna let you know I beat your ass. Like, that's who I am. So I'm not the type that will frown upon somebody celebrating that way. I know some people were saying, like, I interviewed Israel afterwards backstage for the quick hits, and he says the word bitch a lot. He says this and that, and he's like, I beat him like a little bitch, and I'm like, cool. But like, it doesn't really bother me. Again, like if I couldn't be in this business for this long if I was easily offended. Like, we all know, some stuff that has happened that I just let roll off my back. It doesn't bother me. So I thought in the moment, I was like, he kind of had it coming, He kind of had it coming, but I could see why some people would be a little bit upset by it. I definitely can understand why they would be. But
do you think there's a double standard with how people react to Izzy's celebrations and interviews and everything? He seems to believe, like, if you look at Colby and you look at him, everyone's going to get mad at him, and he thinks there's a double standard.
I mean, yeah. There is sometimes, like, people pick and choose whose confidence they like, right? People pick and choose who's got swagger and who's cocky, like where does it go over the line, And the same ones that might celebrate Colby, maybe for certain reasons, don't like Israel Adesanya for certain reasons. I'm not going to try to, like, whatever, assume anything like that, but yeah, I mean, I think, if I'm honest, yeah, I do think that somebody like Israel is going to get criticized more for being confident than Colby would be. Yeah, I do think so.
And then one final one. You mentioned you do interviews backstage.
Yeah.
Laura does interviews.
Yeah.
Megan does interviews.
Yeah.
Do you think the next logical step is a female actually on the broadcast commentating?
Well, yeah, no, I've actually spoken about that because actually Angela and I were talking about that the other day. I want to do play-by-play. And so we were saying what would be really cool would be like me doing play-by-play, have Laura and Angela, doing the commentary or something like that. What I would love to do is maybe get that going like on an alternate feed, like even if it's on Fight Pass, right? And you can tune in on Fight Pass and listen to us instead. And like, I know people, we don't need a chick feed for MMA or whatever, but guess what? A lot of chicks like fights, and it's different. It would be something different to do. We're not trying to force it on anybody, but I think it would be a really cool idea. I know for me, like, I've never actually sat down and done the play-by-play, but when I'm watching fights and when I'm watching my tape, I'm trying to call it in my head. Jon Anik is so good. He sets such a high standard. So I definitely have had people to learn from. I started out in Showtime Championship Boxing years ago. That's where I went first, and I remember talking to the guys there about what makes a good commentator and what makes a good play-by-play person, and they were basically saying, they're like, look, don't pretend to know what you don't know, and speak to the action in front of you. And so I believe that's the approach that I would have. And even though I do think I know some things, I wouldn't try to be predictive with what I think is coming. Yes, I would think, okay, maybe he looks like to be setting up an armbar or something like that, but I know that I would have the ability to just actually speak to the action and let whomever is doing the commentating shine. Because, I mean, really, basically, that's what I feel like I am, like a quarterback a lot of the time. I feel like, when people joke sometimes with Bisping, if they're on the post show, they're like, Bisping looks like he was a little tipsy. I'm like, Bisping might have been a little tipsy, but you know what? It doesn't matter because I don't care if the passengers on the bus are drunk, but I'm the bus driver. So I'm not going to be drunk, but you can do whatever you need to do, right? So I really do feel like part of the reason I've been able to be successful is because I haven't made it about me. Like, it's the old adage that if you make the other people feel comfortable, you're doing your job right. You know what I mean? So that's how I've always tried to approach it, and not make it about me and not make it it's not about me. The show is not about me. If I can facilitate the conversation, if I can help you look good, then that's what I'm there for. So yeah, I would love to do that.
We don't see a lot of women in this sport.
Yeah.
I mean, not only fighters, I'm talking about reporters.
Right.
We even have this talk one of these days.
Yeah.
What can you say to encourage women to join the sport? I know
Right.
some girls feel like intimidated, or guys feel intimidated by us,
Right.
because we know about the sport and all that.
Yeah.
What can you say to encourage them?
Well, I would definitely encourage women to try to get involved in it, but I would always say what I always say from the beginning, like, you can't just be a cute face. If you think you're going to get in here and be successful just because you're really cute, that might last a week or two. I know from the time that I started covering, we started MMA Heat in 2007. And so I've been covering this for a long time. And I remember seeing a lot of different women come and go in that time because they weren't there with any substance. They were there just looking cute and being flirty and whatever. And they didn't really bring any substance. So I always tell people, like, good looks help. And, there's a certain requirement for women on television. We know that you need to be presentable or whatever. But you really just need to know your facts. If you know your facts, if you know what you're talking about, come with some confidence and don't be afraid. But again, don't pretend to know what you don't know. And don't be afraid to ask questions. I think there's a lot more opportunity for people now, like with all the social media, that you can really start to get your own things going. And maybe for the women who want to get started, maybe don't sit there and for your first call try to interview Jon Jones, but maybe for your first call try to interview someone on Jon's team or somebody that's on the prelims, or go down to a local gym. I mean, that's where we started. I used to spend so much time at Rain Training Center and King's MMA and all that, and just like getting to know the fighters and stuff there and building the trust with them there. And find a gym near you. Go just start practice. Do it in your living room. I mean, it's not that hard. It can be hard to get noticed, but now there's so many more ways to get your own voice out that I would say if anybody has the idea to do it, go for it. I just moments ago read a quote from Rich Franklin on Twitter. He said something: I don't consider somebody a failure who doesn't achieve their dreams. I consider them a failure if they don't go for their dreams. I'm paraphrasing, but I was like, amen. Like, that's how I feel about it. Yeah. And yet I'm still 25.
But what changes have you seen throughout the years?
Chicks in MMA, baby. No, I love it. That's one of the huge things. I remember, obviously for the longest time, there weren't any women there. And I remember being in Seattle, and Nate was fighting Benson, and that was in the press conference when they had Rhonda come out and give her belt and everything, and then we knew she was going to be fighting. That was really exciting, because I'd already interviewed Rhonda a bunch of times down at Dynamics MMA in Santa Monica, because I was hustling and just, learning how to talk to people and stuff. So obviously that's a huge change, and we know that, when the women are on the card now, everybody knows, well, women have a real good chance of getting fight of the night now. So that's been really cool. I will say, the level of technique is so incredible now. The level of the athletes now. And now you have people that started at age 16 who have just been indoctrinated with every element of MMA. Like, the level of the game is so high now that, like in a lot of, like in the women's strawweight division, for example, like there's so much parity among them. There's so much high quality girls that these girls can fight each other for 5 years and swap places all the time. They're just, it's exciting to me. But I will say there's a part of me though too, like when we see the Carloses and when we see, I was here last time and Little Nog retired, and Shogun's only got a couple more, and Damien's got a couple more, and Anderson only maybe is on the way. And so a lot of the people that I covered when I first started are either already done or are finishing up. And so that's a little strange to see the passage of time, but there's so much more exciting young talent that you always just get re-inspired. And so, like, next thing you know, and Israel Adesanya comes around, and you're like, we might have the second coming of Anderson Silva, and hell yeah. Sure.
Real quick,
Yeah.
you went to Brown, right?
I did go to Brown.
Why hasn't UFC gone to Rhode Island?
Ha, dude. Okay, so
I'm from Providence.
okay, wicked good. Yeah, so Mike Ricci and I were talking about that because I'm a little sour about this, that I haven't gotten to work any of the Boston shows ever, which is bum me out. I did go that time when Chael and Shogun were there. I was covering it from my own side, and first met Conor backstage there, which was cool. But yeah, so the Rhode Island show, we were talking about that because we're like, look, it's a little roady, but like people would come from New York, people would come from Connecticut, people would come from Massachusetts. We could just do it right downtown. Providence, like when I was in school there, like Providence was a dump. Buddy Cianci was like getting reelected and everything, and it was kind of like the city was still run by the mob and everything. Okay, fine. But they the best Italian food. Oh my God, up in Federal Hill was so good, right? I used to go to Camille's Roman Garden all night long. I took the chili peppers there after a show at the living room. We need a show in Rhode Island. I absolutely, one of my producers, Mike Ricci, we literally have spoken about it over and over and over again. I would love to have a show in Providence. It'd be great because then I figured I would go back to school. You know what I mean? I could do some talks over there and stuff like that, like while I was back, because I loved Brown. Like, I loved it. I had such a good time there.
Do you think it just takes a fighter from Rhode Island to have to make it big?
Maybe. I mean, I know we have a lot of guys, like there's guys from Fall River, which is really close, to
Rhode Island.
Exactly. Fall River. Right? Yeah, maybe that's it. But I mean, or maybe it's just like, maybe we get a good rate on the arena or something like that. I don't know. Like, yeah, I would love it. I don't know what it would take. Maybe that's it. Just somebody from that area to really kind of could have put a stamp on the need for it. But there's so many great fighters in New England. I mean, let's hit up Calvin Cater and just have him like get all his boys up there. And I mean, like, there's so many good people we could have on a card. Yeah.
So there are 4 cards left.
Yep.
Is there any fight you're looking forward the most?
Khabib and Justin. I mean, come on. Because Justin is fearless and Khabib's the man. And so I'm really, really curious to see how that one plays out. And I'm really excited for the return of Brian Ortega. I don't want to just big time on these main events or whatever, but Brian is so good, and it's just been so long since we've seen him. And with the Korean Zombie being that dangerous, I'm actually really, really excited about those two main events. Yeah.
Talking about Khabib, what do you think makes him so special that no one seems to know how to find the keys to beat him?
Well, yeah. I mean, he must be just. He's incredibly strong, obviously. The fact that, obviously I work with DC a lot, and just the stuff that he would tell me about, training with Khabib and stuff, like, there's just that, he has that unbreakable confidence, really, of knowing how successful he's been for so many years and at such a high level. And also I don't know, I feel like he knows he carries the mantle for so many other people, too, and he really sort of takes pride in that. I really see him as somebody that really respects the game and respects the sport, and has just like always taken it so seriously, and I just find that really admirable. And I know the stuff with Conor got a little dicey or whatever, and that's really why that upset me, because I remember after that fight, that really kind of threw me off, because I actually really expect a lot from Khabib. I never expected him to like stoop so low, if I'm being honest. You know what I mean? So I was really sort of taken aback by that, because he's always carried himself so well, and he's always carried himself as such a champion, that I find that very admirable.